Hi everyone, excited to be here again with a new talk show, I guess, or video recording. Yeah, so I'm here today with my friend Chris. Yeah, Chris and I, we've been working together for many years now, maybe like four years, maybe 4 or 5 years. Yeah. So I brought Chris on board here to kind of share his story about Park UI and like how he's been building this awesome project over the years. And I definitely love to sort of help you to see behind the scenes of all the work that he has done and the thought process behind it. So yeah, welcome, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Normally, I just see you with other guys and girls, not with me. That's I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. That's cool. So yeah, I think we can kick off by just like sharing with me like when at some point I launched we after all of the work and prototyping, we launched like Panda CSS. And along the line we did Park UI also. I think because RQI was like launched. I mean, after a while, I started to see you make a repo called Park UI, and then I was wondering, like, what's going on? Like, what were your thought process behind that? Like, could you share, like, why did you like start this project?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, so Park UI was kind of like the reason for Park UI was just like the dogs in Ark UI. They had to be like designed and written, and we want to showcase all of the headless components that are coming there, like with a nice UI. And I thought like, yeah, sure, we can do this like right into the project. But then I felt like, yeah, why not just like trying to make a separate project? And that's basically the reason Park UI was born. Hence the name, like P for Panda and Ark, and then the rest, right? So Park UI.
Yeah.
Along the road, we also had support for Taven, which I dropped because it was too much of work. But yeah, so now it's basically just like a nice little Panda CSS plus Arc UI component library. And was just invented for the pure sake of having some components to show in the Arc UI website. But yeah, now we have a bit more than that. But yeah, it was basically just the birthday or the born day of Arc UI. Arc UI. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So when you think about Park UI, the system itself, like how would you describe it right now? Like if you wanted to actually talk to someone about it.
Yeah, it's a good one. So the question, not the system, maybe it is. I don't know. Yeah, so the idea for how Park UI is designed was obviously inspired by Shadcn, all of kind of this hype of kind of using a headless component library, pair or match it with some sort of CSS engine, and then you have your design system, which is a bit like, at least at the time I was creating it, like a bit different than what has been like the default in the industry since then. Like normally you had like all this big, nice looking, ready to use plug and play UI libraries like Chakra, like Material UI. I don't know, like there's so many right now.
Yeah.
But it's a bit like different than that. The idea actually most likely coming down to the principle or the idea of like open code. So you basically get all the code from the UI design system in your project, which can feel a bit overwhelming to start, but you will appreciate the value of that later once you kind of realize, this button component is nice, but I need like, I don't know, an icon left, an icon right, and maybe one below, I don't know. And just realizing, yeah, the UI maintainer will not implement that feature for me. So yeah, either I have to, well, just like create my own button component and diverge from the UI component library I'm using, or like just suffer and not doing it. Yeah, so you have to pick like one solution that kind of, well, works in that scenario. And with this open code approach, the idea is a bit like you get all the code in your code base, well, and then there's a bug, well, you fix it. You have a new variant you want, just you add it. And you don't like this variant, you just delete it. And yeah, so that was actually basically the whole idea. I think in general, it makes a lot of sense. Not for everyone, I guess, like there are also like people still using just like the ready to use UI component libraries, also totally fine still. But then I think from like an enterprise perspective, I would say that makes a bit more sense to have more control, as mostly you have a designer and design system team even that need to craft some components, and then this open code approach where you basically download all the sources into your project makes over the long run more sense than like a ready to use UI component library. But yeah, again, not for everyone, because I can also see like we just want to have something to prototype or just like don't really bother because like it just should look good and then that's all you need. So yeah, that was basically the main or key difference compared to others at the time, at least.
Yeah, makes sense. That makes sense. So for you, like, I mean, having like tested and played with this system so far, like, would you say like you prefer like an open code setup versus like ready to use, like everything baked in system?
I think highly depends on the context and the project you're working on. If you just need a small little UI for your home lab or something, I mean, you don't want to start and create your own design system. That feels a bit over the top. But if you're working for a company, you have a designer in your team, and there's just in general like a lot of very like sophisticated components, like application layouts, like you really have to work with data or stuff like that. You want to create your own data table, filters and stuff like that. Then I can definitely see like an open code project or concept or design system coming in very handy, as you can just tweak as you need and not have to worry about any kind of like dependence on some other maintainer or UI library, and you have to wait for a bug fix something to happen. But yeah, in general, right now at my job, I definitely like it more because it gives me more freedom. And I mean, also using stuff I created, so it makes it also very easy. But even if you don't have that, you still will find yourself. I think the only tip I can give for everyone using this kind of approach, even if it's Shadcn or Park UI, doesn't matter. Don't overdo it. Just pick the components you actually need, not just like install all components, because I think this is just like, it gets very, very overwhelming very soon. And just like pick the stuff you need and go from there and find your way and see if it's something for you. But yeah, that's always like very dependent on the people using it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So let's geek out a little bit on like just the whole concept of Park UI and the design system in general, because I could technically say like Park UI is a design system. So when you think about like this project and before you started building the system, I mean, could you share like things you considered to like what kind of technical decision or design decisions do I bake into the system that I call Park UI?
Yeah, that's a good one. I kind of like had a lot of back and forth with my designer at the time, Phil, that helped a lot, like shaping the UI. I can just maybe quickly share like some of the screens here.
Okay.
So the main, I would say, idea behind Park UI was like, I want to have something a bit more sophisticated than Shadcn, which is like, I mean, right now I'm kind of growing, but at the time I was looking into it was very basic in the form of like sizing and variants. It was very like, just like one size, one variant most of the time for all the components. And I found that it's a bit too little for actually consider it to be a design system. Nevertheless, I think it's still like totally valid to have a smaller set of variants and sizes. But yeah, at least I have a few to play with. And for me, it was like basically I want to have something that makes sense, right? Something I can, without even looking into the code, can kind of like just guess. And so, for example, here the sizing idea in Park is you have your primary components, like I would say button, input, select, like the normal thing, right? They're clearly visible on your page, but not like an XXL headline or something. Just a normal component, I would say. And then like your secondary, like little brother components, like badges, checkboxes, switches, like
the smaller ones.
Right?
I see.
Yeah, like the smaller ones, right? I don't think that a checkbox normally is as big as an input, but maybe there are design systems that have that, but yeah, I don't know. And I kind of like would say, like for me, like this is coming from Chakra, the early years. We have like a default size medium, like this like default. I don't know why, but just like felt like default medium, like in between, right? And I was like, okay, let's set a fixed value of 40 pixel, like the same with like one RAM being 16 pixel, just like no, it's 40 pixel for medium size. It kind of felt really nice most of the time. In the application design, you're most likely going to 36. Even like 32, but like the landing pages, they go like 40 or even higher. So like I found 40 like a very good center.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, like now let's just make the second turning point just half the size. So whenever they have like two checkboxes, like it just basically fits exactly into one medium-sized input, like two medium-sized
Nice.
checkboxes. And that was basically the whole concept. You can see it basically here in this little, it's actually hard-coded. This is not like an image. I don't know how many hours I needed to code this. But yeah, this is like kind of showcasing by the idea like a 2XL secondary size components, like 2XL checkbox basically being 32 pixels and a 2XL input or button next 64. Like that's the concept, right? And I felt like at least it makes sense. I mean, if you don't like the sizing, you just change it. But like I felt like just the initial kickoff, it should make sense, right?
Yeah, true.
So that like was sizing was born. And then the kind of same thing with variants. I kind of like, I checked Chakra, the variants there, and I kind of like this, I noticed a pattern that most of the time just it comes down to those variants, like solid, subtle, surface, outline, and plane. Even though they may not always the same name in different UI frameworks, but they most likely do the same thing.
Correct.
Right?
Makes sense. Makes sense.
I think like showing the button here will show a bit more of that. So you have like your variants and the solid just basically having like a solid experience. A surface doesn't really show here, but actually has a background, while the outline doesn't have a background. It's like, well, just a drawback of having a UI design system. Showing a UI design system is like very hard. But this has a background, like a white background, like a surface background. In this case, white. And then the subtle just like being like a darker version. And then the outline not having a background, and the plane, just like being a plain thing. And I try to apply the same variants for all components most of the time. And that turned out pretty well. Like, yeah. So that's basically two main concepts, I would say, in Park UI that should help you get to speed, even though you don't have any clue about what a design system is or what variants I need. That's definitely a good starter, and then you can diverge from there.
Makes sense. And I also noticed you have like some sort of radio system as well, like L1, L2 kind of.
Oh yeah, that's actually coming from Phil at the time. So basically, it's very simple, but you have to understand like once. So we have like various inner circles, and I think you're starting with L1 as like your smallest circle. So the idea basically being nothing goes in L1. Like you can consider L1 like an icon or like a checkbox, something like where nothing can go further into it. Yeah. And then whatever you do, basically you can wrap this and then put like L2. So if you have one L1 as a base, and then the next element as the border is L2. So let's say for our case, it would be button, for example. And then L3 could be then a card where the button lives in. And then with that, you can see it here. I tried my best to visualize it. You can see like the border radius or border radii, go like just perfectly aligning here, right? So like you have this concept of like those three layers, and you don't have to think about it because when you have an L1 element as base, and you can just put an L2 on top, and then you can just stack that. I kind of stopped at 3 because I've never felt I need more, but you can definitely just go L4, F5 if you need that, and then. And you can actually see it really nicely here. So when you can go here, and then you can just increase the border radius, and it should look good most of the time. For all the examples here. That's like one of the other concepts. Not as fancy, I would say, or important as the others, but still, nice to have.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Sweet. But I also like wanted to just like spot on highlight on the CLI itself, right? Because building an open code system requires actually having a CLI to be able to pull the code from Park UI's repo into my project, for example. Yeah. Do you want to touch on like how did you build the CLI? How does it work? Just to help people actually learn this system.
Yeah, it's so annoying to build this kind of stuff because something is very important to have. And this is one of the drawbacks of this open code thing, as you kind of like now have to, be your own NPM and kind of like get the code to the user base. I mean, as a starter, you can just like go here and just copy the code and get it into your project. But I think once you start to add more components, like it's very tedious to do that. So there's basically now this Park UI CLI, which is just kind of, you just have to init project and then just ask a couple of questions like what framework, where you want to store your files, this kind of stuff. Very similar to the Shadcn CLI, if you ever use that. And then you're just going to start to add components. For example, the button is like one that actually has a dependency. So for example, the button, as it has a spinner, has a dependency to loader. And so you have to basically then also install the loader component if you haven't. And then this is, well, just handling this for you. You basically do this, and then you get all the button related recipes and component snippets into your code base. And then from there you can take it and design it, change it, modify it, stuff like that, right? So that's here, for example, right?
Nice.
Yeah, it was very tedious to build this, but yeah, it kind of works, and that's all you need to know. And yeah, there's a registry in the project, and then you just basically, there's a JSON file, and you store all the information there, and then you just unpack it in the CLI. But yeah, it's annoying to do, but yeah, you need it for this kind of type of project.
Yeah, that's interesting, because that means like, at least for an open code system, I mean, building a CLI and going through this annoying phase of building a registry, which of course for those that don't know, a registry is pretty much a JSON that includes the files and the code, literally, and maybe any extra CSS that's needed for that component. So that when you install it with this Ark command, the CLI will set up the thing in the way it should for it to work correctly.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, so far building out Park UI, like what would you say like has been like maybe the top 2 challenges you faced? Like, what's the hardest things you've done in this project?
Definitely CLI is very, very annoying to build, because there are so many different project setups, and then TS configs being different places and stuff like that. So you really have to rely on good libraries that handles this stuff for you and find them and actually make them work. And even though it works for you, it doesn't mean that it works for everyone. So you really have to then listen for feedback and people reporting issues with the CLI. It's very hard to test, because like the file system people are working with is very different in the setup and how the files are organized. So there's and then it's also not really adding any value to your UI system. It's just like you have to have it and you have to build it, have to maintain it, but it's really not doing anything in terms of like, nice looking stuff. It's just like, and that's why it makes it so hard and so challenging. The other I would say is like the color tokens and this kind of stuff. I think the key thing for me here was basically nail it down to basically those variants, and then each color basically has a setup for those variants.
Tokens.
Right? Tokens, yes, sorry. So that basically was the key challenge, and also took me quite a few iterations to nail it. So it makes sense. We want to have a very flexible thing to start off with. I don't want to overdo it and come up with like crazy variants and tokens. And then basically you need hours to understand the token system. And that's something I'm trying to avoid as much as I could. And come up with a couple of variants so we can get started, but you don't get overwhelmed with like a ton of tokens you don't understand. And so that was basically the hardest challenge, I would say. But I think it turns out to be pretty well, and you can try for yourself and see if you like it or not.
Nice. So let's talk about colors now. I mean, one thing that I know that is quite different from Park UI, or between Park UI and say Panda CSS and Chakra UI, is the fact that you chose to use the Radix UI colors as your base, right? So could you touch a bit on that, like why? Because I know at least the Chakra and the Panda one was quite inspired by the Tailwind colors. So could you touch on like why you decided to sort of like veer away from that and just use Radix colors instead?
Yeah, I think like the 50 to 950 colors are pretty solid choice for most projects. So if you're fine with that, that's just awesome. There's nothing bad with that. What I find is basically just the flexibility you lose. So you can just count 50 to 950. You're having like 12 shades per color. And, and then when you collect those here, 11, sorry, not 12, 11. And then like with the color palette from Radix, which is a very awesome, just like idea of how to color. They also give you clues like what color to use for what situation. I mean, it's just guidance. You don't have to stick to them.
Yeah.
But the idea basically is like, it doesn't really matter if you're dark or light. So basically you have gray 1 in this case, or let's say gray 12. And then you just change it to light mode. The token is still the same. It's still called gray 12. But now for the light and dark mode, just switching its value. And it gives you a total of like 24 tokens per shade or per color palette. And then
Were you sharing your screen? Because I think we skipped that part. Yeah, I can still see the Panda UI website.
yeah, I mean, this is like gray 1 and this is like gray 12.
I
Like
see.
the right one here. And then if you change, like, make it like dark and light, you can see it kind of like changes to the appropriate color in the dark or light scheme.
Yeah.
And then gives like a total of 24 colors compared to the 11 you get from the normal 50 to 950 setup. So you have like already like almost double the color tokens just for this. And the cool thing also, like the Radix colors also support alpha color values. So you have every kind of like, I don't know, like red 9 comes with an alpha value. And then you basically now have 48 colors. And so, yeah, that's pretty just like giving you more options and giving you more freedom to design your design system and color it, make it yours, right?
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I think, of course, most people might think that, like, I mean, why do you have to use that many colors? Like, isn't it better to actually work with less colors? I mean, so your UI is more consistent. Like, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, but it kind of you realize really quickly that having a couple of more shades to play with is actually very helpful. And more often than not, you find yourself using like opacity modifiers or stuff like that. So you have like a bit more range. And yeah, that's why I kind of felt like, I think it's a good start. This 5950, don't get me wrong, it's maybe even enough for most projects. But sometimes you just feel yourself like adding some modifiers to it because you need a bit more range, especially when you consider hover and active and this all kind of soil selectors. So yeah, I think having more is not a bad thing. Especially, I mean, we don't talk like I don't know, like X times more, just like double the tokens. So it's like, it's a bit more, but not like so much more, right?
Yeah, makes sense. So yeah, I think one last thing I'd like to touch before wrapping up would be like around, so at the very start, you built like Panda UI, I'll say V0 or V1, whatever you choose to call that, or legacy. Yeah, so, and then you went on like a huge journey again to actually like make a new version. Like what's the thought process behind that?
Yeah, so V0 basically was like a good first shot, I would say, but it kind of, well, it doesn't really have all the concept that I have now, like all the sizing and the variants. So I kind of felt like that's something that's new, and I kind of felt that was missing in the V0 version, that there was not really like a concept for all of the things. And well, now there is. So that was basically the main effort that went into this. The thing with versioning for an open code base or project is really hard because you don't really have any kind of like dependency. In the V0, there was like this preset. So you could just install a preset and then you get all this CSS. And it was like very good to start, right? Like you just basically had to get the code snippets from like some kind of mirroring or marrying the Panda recipe with the Ark components.
Yeah.
But to be honest, like it was like missing something, right? Because like the open code kind of means that, well, you just modify everything, not just like the TSX portion of it, but also like just like the CSS portion of it. And it was like hidden away in this preset. And I mean, obviously you could extend the variants and kind of like fight against it. But now once let's say you install a button component and then you basically have like the recipe, you get it alongside to the actually just like TSX file. You get also the recipe file. And now basically it's all yours, right? You can change, say, the gap between text and icon is by default just 2, and you don't like that, you want to have it like, I don't know, 4, like 16 pixels, whatever reason, then just do that, right? And you just can start it. You find something annoying, like, I don't know, don't want to like animate any of those properties, you just kill it, right? Or you just add a new variant. You found like you need one new variant. You just add it, right? Or you want to have a different disabled value, just do it. And then that's, I think it's much easier to work with than having this preset and then just like somehow coming back to the old days. Yeah. You have to find this black box of a UI component library and tweak it. Now it's basically part of your code base as well. And funny enough, as a Park UI was created, AI wasn't really a thing. And now basically having actually the code in your code base is actually really cool, because now you can just ask the AI to like add a new variant, given the current variants and stuff like that. And you can do a couple of things. And turns out that was like by accident a very cool thing. So if you have your LM running or your agent running and have access in the code base to your all the designs and CSS, well, that turns out to be very helpful.
Yeah, sure. Makes sense. Awesome. Thanks for walking us through this. Very helpful. You could stop sharing your screen now. Let's get into like maybe like two interesting like just chatty questions, I would say. One is like, I mean, you just talked about like AI and being able to use AI, but like what's your take on like where like design systems, component libraries heading now that we've got like AI in the chat, right? AI is now here in the mix of everything. What do you see like this, like, I mean, this work of maintaining something like Park UI or even Chakra UI, like where do you see it heading in the future?
Yeah, that's a very good question and a very controversial one. Let's say it that way. I would say AI is really, really good when it comes down to organized systems. And so I think the VP or Google Cloud AI said something like, in an agentic, the hard truth is that you cannot simply overlay these powerful new tools onto messy, inconsistent systems and expect good results. And I think the design system can really help kind of like guide your LLM to get the most out of it. Because the prediction, which comes down to, is basically very much better when you have a consistent design system, because in the prediction mostly is correct. And then a new solid variant for a new component most likely will just work as you have a consistent design system that kind of like embraces this idea. I think like in general, without that, it just dog shit. It dies over. Design and LLMs don't go good together, in my opinion. I never had the feeling that I get something useful out of it. I think with a bigger context and like a design system in the background that you can feed into the context, I would say the results could be very much better. But no guarantee, as design is always something very subjective. And not just because an LM creates it, makes it good by default. So you have to definitely tweak it, I guess. But it can be very good, but obviously it has to have a good context and a good organized system as a base. And then let's try.
I see. Is there a world where like, I mean, AI could maybe like take your job as like, I mean, maybe maintain Park UI for you or something like this?
That would be nice. That would be possible. No, I don't think so yet. Also, like I mean, as a software engineer, you somewhat have an understanding like what's going on when you ask an LLM a question. So I can say definitely no. Also for the near future, at least not in the way that it's the kind of like background or the way an LLM works. I would not say that's something that comes in very soon. But where it's actually very helpful is like when you have A and you want to go to B and you kind of like can give it like a clue what B should be. So just like give an example, like I have a React Park UI component and can just ask the LLM to convert this to a solid version or to a Vue version. Oh boy, is this ever good. That's like something when you already know where you want to go. And then basically, then it acts like as a very sophisticated regex, where it kind of like a search and replace and just creates a bunch of files and converts it to your desired language or framework. Then that's really good and makes also like maintaining Arc UI, Park UI not as crazy as people think it is with all the different JavaScript frameworks that we support. So that's really cool for me as a tool. But like when it comes down to architectural things or just like problem solving. I don't think that AI will get us that far in any time soon. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents. I know a lot of people have other opinions, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the same also. Like, I mean, there's a lot of creative work that's involved in making a design system besides just trying to make things consistent. I think consistency is something that maybe even AI can help you with. But see, when it comes to the topic of creativity, like this variant system, coming up with a system like you have with Park UI, the sawtooth, the solid, the sizes, those kind of things can't really be taught up by an AI without any help. I mean, I love people like to do like a one shot, so just type a single prompt and everything comes together. But no, a design system is not one that you can do like a single prompt and it's all done. It requires like careful shepherding, careful monitoring, careful design, thoughtfulness to actually make it happen. So
yes,
I share the same also. Last question I've got for you here is one question I think I've seen recently in the Chakra UI GitHub and also in Park UI's GitHub discussion. And the question is by the same person now. So it's kind of like a question of like, since you announced that Park UI joined Chakra UI, one maybe confusing thought people might have is like, when do I actually use Park UI? When do I actually use Chakra UI? Because I mean, they both look somewhat similar, but they're also different in that sense. So, how would you address that?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like it's very hard to answer a question for you in that sense. I think so Chakra UI and Park UI like fundamentally different UI libraries. They're not even close to being like the same. They share some components, some ideas and stuff like that. Like, but I think in general that's true for all UI libraries across the globe. They're based on the same headless JavaScript framework. That's something they have in common. So Ark UI is our foundation, and everything built is on top of that. And that's something you will notice really quickly because like the parts and all the kind of setup looks more or less the same. Like from an architectural point of view, I would say they're like very, very different. Chakra UI is like one of the things you just install, use it, build your design, build your apps, build your views, whatever you do, and you call it a day. And there's nothing really involved, and you don't need to learn anything. You just look a bit of like the components. For Chakra, you most likely want to install the MCP, and then it will go from there. And very much like what it's been like for the last few years. For Park UI, it's like more like in the realm of the Shadcn kind of scope where you get your open code approach, you install all the code in your own code base. Not everyone likes that. Not everyone's a fan of that. I can definitely see why. But the benefit of that, as I tried to discuss earlier, is like you have the full control. You can design it. You can tweak it as you go. You can take what you see from the get-go and you don't need to do anything. And then later, once your project goes like more like on the steamroll and you just like hire people and the thing you do is just working for you. And then now you can start tweaking without any sweat, just change it. So they're totally different. And if you're using Chakra UI and you're happy, there's no need for you to switch. I mean, why would you? It just doesn't do any value for users, just using a different tech stack. If you're deciding for a new project, well, then it comes down to, if I just want to do a little dashboard for my home lab when check like my solar power I generating, I don't know if I would use Park UI for that. Just I guess like Park UI, Chakra UI, install that, render a couple of components and call it a day. But when you for your business, you want to start a new project that earn you some money over the next years, and well, you have to consider more carefully, I would say. And then it comes down to personal preference, what you like better, and then just evaluating your options, and then pick what's good for you, what you think is good for you, and that's all I can say. Park UI is not here to replace Chakra; it's more like an other option. And if you're happy with Chakra, there's no need to use Park. If you like Park, you use Park. I mean, that's just it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so one fundamental difference, for example, between Park UI and Chakra is the fact that Park UI uses Panda which is
we
more
are.
like a static engine. And Chakra currently still uses Emotion, which is a runtime CSS in JS. Of course, we use that in some sort of an efficient manner, so that you don't incur too much cost. But I guess the tricky part then becomes like, at some point, Chakra replaces the Emotion with Panda also. Then the question then becomes at that point, like, do I continue using like the new Chakra thing with Panda, or do I use Park UI? Do you think there'll be like a conflict at that point where it's like they both use the same tech stack, so like why should I pick one over the other?
Yeah, I mean, and still, even if they still would use both the same tech stack, they would still, and I think again, like just a color system alone is a very different one between those two. And then it also comes down to if you could even make the switch as easy, because Emotion is like, again, a bit different than Panda. And there are certain limitations that a static CSS engine brings to the table. They are very tiny nowadays, like really hard to notice, but still have to be very careful. But again, like if you have a working Chakra UI project, and to be honest, like if you ask me, there's no reason to change anything. If you like what you have, if you can work with this, then I think that's just fine. And then when the future comes, I don't know, maybe they'll be merged together, maybe just something else. I don't know. And I really cannot predict the future anyway. So maybe Emotion comes up with something new that kind of makes a lot of things better, and then Chakra can just stay with Emotion forever. I think there was some discussion around new React utilities, style tags, stuff like that.
Yeah,
I haven't followed. I just know that there was some discussion around this. Maybe React even brings something new to the table, or like making style components a thing in server components, stuff like that. But I think for now they have to fix some bugs. I heard they had some issues lately. But well, maybe I don't know. Let's see where the future we're heading. We definitely want that very AI influence, I guess, for the time being. But let's see. I mean, totally open for anything new, I'll be honest.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for this conversation. I think it was quite enlightening to see, because one of the things I wanted to do was to get to show like the thought process behind all the things that you do, because you've done a lot of work, a lot of good work, to be honest, on Park UI. And I'm sure it shows. People that look at it also see the amount of work that's gone into that. So yeah, if you're watching this, feel free to check out Park UI. I mean, consider using Park UI for your project, also. And yeah, I mean, besides using Park UI, I mean, don't forget to shout out to the creators of this project, and maybe buy them a coffee if you feel good enough about it. Awesome. Yeah, thanks a lot for coming, Chris.
Yes, thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.